Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program in which we speak about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Malawi is a landlocked country in Central Africa with about 18 million people. The nation, also known as the Warm Heart of Africa, is among the world's least developed countries. The economy is heavily based in agriculture, with a largely rural population. And the country is making efforts to overcome decades of underdevelopment and corruption. It is also one of the most Christian-dominant communities in Africa today, with over 80% Christian and Muslims making up about 13% of the total population. Despite an abundance of natural resources, Malawi is one of the least developed nations in the world, with over 50% of the population living below the poverty line. To tell us more about this fascinating country, it is my great privilege to welcome the Bishop of Zomba, His Excellency Bishop George Desmund Tambala of Zomba, Malawi. Your Excellency, thank you for being here today in our program.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for this time.
Your Excellency, I want to jump right in to know a little bit about you, about your youth, about your childhood. Can you give us a description, an idea of what was growing up for you in rural Malawi?
Yeah, I was born in Zomba, 1968. Zomba is where I'm the bishop at the moment. My parents were both teachers. They moved a lot from place to place. That time, teachers used to be transferred around. So we grew up in different places, but mostly in rural areas. So I would say from where I was born to where I grew up, it would be about 150 kilometers away.
So it's home.
Yes.
It is home,
yeah.
Which sometimes is difficult, I imagine, being a prophet in your own home, no?
Yes, yes.
Rural environment, you mentioned you've moved a lot. What would be a typical traditional village in which you would have grown up?
The typical village would be a lot of grass-thatched houses. On the floor you'd find, it wasn't cement.
It was mud, a mud floor.
Yes. The women would use bottles to kind of make the floor smooth. There would be no roads like in some parts of the country.
How do people get around?
Oh, we used to have paths that would be the main ways where people would go through. Bridges that were improvised, made of wood, and during the rainy season, it sometimes would be stuck. To go to town, it was impossible. We just had to wait it out. So places where we had a lot of mosquitoes. I remember malaria used to be a very common disease,
right.
And we used to have nearby all the time chloroquine, this medication for.
It was nonetheless a mobile. I mean, it was a mobile. You were moving every 5 years as a consequence of your parents being teachers. But it was a happy childhood.
Yes, I must say, I look back some of the best years of my life. We had, apart from school, would have a time to play. We didn't have the TV as is today, no phone. In those days, there was nothing like that. What we had was plenty of human contact, plenty of listening to the stories around. Someone would be dead, a funeral around would be there. When there was a wedding, a feast, would be part of it. We were all invited.
So the community sense is very strong.
Very strong. The sense of family was much wider than today. The family meant even those who are not related to you by blood, but you knew the family and they became part of us. So I still retain some of those phrases.
Would you have considered yourself poor?
In my setting, we weren't poor. because my parents were teachers, were getting a salary, which wasn't much, but we compared to others, we were better off. Around us, most of my friends would be extremely poor. They wouldn't even have shoes on. They would even come sometimes to take a meal at our house. So we used to have an open house. It was unthinkable to refuse like a food to a person. So that was the poverty, also a question of people getting sick, not able to wear proper clothing. It was not here.
Is this changing?
It is changing. It is changing. What we have now, because of people going to school, a lot of the youth are moving out to towns. The jobs are not that many around, but at least with education, people are able to bring back something home, in the sense of they're able to educate their own siblings, but also their friends at home. This has taken out a good part of the population from the poverty. But I think we still have a long way to go. A long way to go.
Now, you grew up in a traditional, can one say, Catholic family. Both your parents were Catholics, but your environment was Muslim.
Yes.
How was this growing up? How was the living together?
From a very early age, I had to learn that I belong to another faith. At the level of social life, we were playing everybody around. But then when it came to matters of faith, my parents, from the very tender age, brought us to the hospital, to the church, but also they used to tell us what we were all about. So the catechesis started in the family. When we went to the parish, it was just a continuation of the catechesis. I really appreciate this because what we call defending the faith, I learned it at a very tender age. You had to learn how to respond to questions about faith, about the rosary, what the rosary was all about. And also to be able to take in criticism about the church and to stand by what we believed.
Now, as we know, unfortunately in Africa we see a radicalization occurring in certain parts. We think of Nigeria, Boko Haram and the influence. But your relations with your neighbors was neighborly, in the sense that the living together between Muslims and Christians never came really into question.
Oh, it was very cordial. I have very good memories, apart from some Muslim preachers who would come and try to stir up a little bit of trouble. But we lived in peace. The Islam that came to Malawi, that I grew up in, around me, was a very moderate type of Islam. We had a lot in common. It was only later in the 80s that they started sending young people to study outside Malawi in countries that are very radicalized. So they came back with new ideas. So there is a growing fundamentalism among the Muslims in Malawi, but still the majority would be they would coexist peacefully with us Catholics.
Just to give us a picture, the Muslims are located where? If we were looking at Malawi, where is the Christian population, where is the Muslim, or are they really mixed that you cannot discern?
In terms of numbers, I think the biggest group of Muslims are found in the south, along Lake Malawi. And
why? What brought them there?
Well, there is a history of the slave trade. The Arabs came about, I think, should be about 400 or 500 years ago. So they came around that area, and later on, they started taking slaves. Their message was that to the tribes, if you are one of us, we are not going to enslave you, because for them in Islam, you don't enslave another Muslim.
So to convert was to escape becoming a slave.
So whole villages converted. It was a way of also securing their freedom, their space. Unfortunately, that wasn't, this came in and it worked in a very negative way, because part of these tribes also were used to capture fellow tribes. We have gone over that to the memories, we have done a lot of healing, but that's the history.
Okay.
Yeah, so today around the south part of Malawi, around the lake, you have a huge concentration of Muslims.
And in the north, then the Christian
In the north,
population.
the south part of it are Christians, but the central region mostly Christians. The north the same.
And then you have the traditional faith,
Certainly.
which we'll come to in a minute. But you've mentioned a couple of times the tribal, and I think it's also interesting perhaps to just understand the tribal constellation. Now, the majority of Malawi, if I understand correctly, is Bantu.
Yes.
The Bantu tribe. You yourself are Bantu.
Yes, I am.
What would be some of the other tribes, and how important, perhaps still today, is ethnic affiliation or tribal affiliation? Is it, for example, among the Christians, can one say that Christianity is number one and then the ethnic affiliation is number two, or is it reversed? Is still ethnic affiliation even above the religious affiliation?
The ethnic ties are very strong. The people they know their identity. I use the word identity by, for example, to which tribe do you belong? The surnames, they already speak a lot about where you belong.
So you can tell exactly by that surname.
Yes.
He belongs to that tribe.
Yeah, though I must say that there's a lot of intermarriage. There are a lot of people marrying across the tribes. So sometimes it's not so easy to say, okay, because this person bears this surname, it belongs to, because that may not be true at all. Now, the tribes are more than 10 tribes in Malawi. Now, the question of what is more important, the faith of the tribe. I feel that for a good number of our people, the faith is important. But when it comes to issues like in the social life, politics, or voting, when it comes to elections, and also when you talk of corruption, that's where the tribe issue comes up very, very much. So opportunities, for example, whether you get a job or not, sometimes the tribe plays a big, unfortunately. Yeah, but we have one language, and that language mostly unites all of us, though we have our own tribal language, which I don't speak.
So the language Chichewa, is that
Chichewa.
right? Chichewa.
Yeah, it is a language that was promoted after independence, and it has really worked for us.
So, and that is the unifying factor.
It's a unifying factor. We do speak the same language, of course, with different accents, but it's the same language.
But you also speak Swahili, you also speak French, you also speak English, you also speak Italian.
Yeah,
a
because
polyglot.
I've been around, other places as a Carmelite, either for formation or I've been also for other things, yeah.
Now the Chewa are very well known for their very elaborate religious traditions. Can you give us a picture of what do we understand by traditional religion? How do we understand this? And secondly, what would be some of these traditional practices? The
religion for the African traditional setting, there is a belief in one God. We don't have the different gods. I think that's not our part of Africa. Now, I think from there, then comes now the connection between this God and what happens in the family. So, for example, if a woman is expecting a baby, what does she have to do that's connected to this, to God? The other thing is about people who have passed on, who have died. There's a belief that these spirits are in communion with the people. So people do rituals for the ancestors. They are like intercessors for them so that their prayers can be heard. It's not a religion that has churches. It's more based on nature, based on the seasons of the year. But they use religion to achieve something, a kind of a utilitarian way of religion.
But it's not this, let's say, other understanding that we have of some of witchcraft or curses and counter curses and shaman and so on and so on.
It's part of it.
It is part of it.
I mentioned that, but that part is there. That's, for example, people believe that if I use something, it has forces against another person. These are believed to be either good or evil forces, powers. So the witch doctors would be those who have the secrets to these kind of powers. If I have an enemy, the belief is that I can go to this man or woman who is a witch doctor, then I can use the forces against my enemy. This, unfortunately, is where witchcraft comes in. So some people are believed to have these negative forces. So even if it doesn't rain because of the weather, no, people would point at the person and say, you are the one responsible.
You're responsible.
If there's a child has died, all of a sudden, the mother can be blamed, or the grandmother, mostly elderly people, that or someone has bewitched this.
And what happens to that individual? Are they banned from the...
Before, it used to be very bad. They would be ostracized. They would be removed from the village. Some were killed. Today, there is a very strong law in Malawi that criminalizes, if I point a finger at you and say you are a witch, I can be arrested. And I think it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
First of all, I suppose the fact of only having one God and the belief in one God is a help, because you are not then having to discern between which God and so on. At the same time, how do you respond to this dark side of these African culture? So how do you manage this question?
We have it easy at the stage of conversion. People don't have a problem to believe. If you tell them that there's one God, no problem. They don't dispute it. But then you have to start with the purification process. Now, this process of purifying, we purify these beliefs that are contrary to the values of the gospel. For example, where Jesus talks a lot in the Gospels about service to the love your neighbor like yourself. How can you kill someone because of a mere suspicion that someone is a witch? The question of instilling people faith, a strong faith, to trust in God, that God is going to take care of you and not some magician somewhere. The other thing we need to do is to purify a part of that keeps people in poverty, whereby people, they just get resigned and say, okay, this is my fate in life. But you can go to school, you can go to the hospital and do something about yourself.
You can change your fate.
You can change your fate. So then we try to avoid syncretism. People have misunderstood that there is this word inculturation.
Exactly. Now I want to just clarify what we mean by syncretism. That means that there are Catholics, Christians, who at the same time might run to the witch to the witch doctor, or might integrate traditional beliefs within Christianity. How does this manifest itself?
It manifests itself by a double life. You have people at Mass in the morning, they'll be very faithful, but then you hear that in the evening they are frequenting these places. So we normally, when we find those kind of things, we do confront the people. There have been sanctions even amongst us. If you are part of this, you can't receive communion, for example. I think if we are very strict on some of them, but some you never know that they are going. So the bishops have talked of this double life. It's like a bat, which is neither a bird nor a rat. So this is part of the catechesis that has to continuously, even in formation of priests. We have to form priests that are able to take people away from these type of, I call them negative, very negative type of beliefs. Influences, yes. And center them on Christ, center them on the sacraments, and center them on a way of life which is human, but also good for the full life. You've mentioned the sacraments, you've mentioned the Eucharist. Is there an understanding of the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist? Is there, it's such a profound, is there an openness of the heart? Is there an understanding, whether it's natural or intellectual, perhaps more natural, instinctive understanding of the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist? Yes. I've only, in all my life as a priest and also as bishop, I've only found one person who expressed doubts about the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And he happened to have stayed out of Malawi many years. The people believe. In fact, one of the things that you see are the adorations of the Blessed Sacrament. Whenever in a parish a priest starts to promote adoration to the Blessed Sacrament, the church is always full. And also when we have the Corpus Christi, you should see amount of people on the road. Even people who are not Catholics, they would shut their businesses just to be part of the procession. This has never been in doubt. So the question you have asked, I think we are fortunate that we have a ground where people easily understand this.
With such a profound faith, because what you're describing is, I've experienced this perhaps a little bit in Northeast India when I was traveling in Northeast India, where the priest almost became like a doctor, because the faith of the people was so profound, was so alive, that miracles, the faith could provoke miracles. And so, I wonder if it's the similar situation that you find.
It is. And look here, I think a lot of our people have experienced silent miracles. I call them silent miracles. You get to hear about them when you meet them, and then they open up. Whenever I go for Mass, there are people coming at the sacristy, the door of the sacristy, to be blessed. They carry their rosaries to be blessed. And they have jugs of water that I should bless. And you ask, why should I, or what do you expect? They say, no, Christ is present and he's going to take care of us in the house. Kids who come from school with their ball pens for writing before exams, I say, Father, bless this. For someone who would look at this as superstition, but look here, we need to be humble enough and accept that God is doing a lot.
And God is bigger than...
Oh yes, of course we do have these Pentecostals who are talking of their own miracles. But you look here, ours is much serious.
Your Excellency, I feel that just evangelization is what you want to do. Do you have hope for your country? Do you have hope for your people that God has a plan for Malawi?
Yes, I've never doubted that. What I see is when we look on the surface, there are a lot of negative stories. Okay, but when we go to the base, to the communities, to the families, I see people with a simple message that even challenge me to say we are improving, and I'm seeing signs of change. We have talked of poverty, for example. I see people, for example, being involved in the church more than before. Like, for example, when we come to the liturgy, one of the things that always gives me hope, when I'm at the altar, just before the consecration, when we have the offering of the bread and the wine, when a priest, I offer it up, and I look down at the people, and I say to myself, but this is the faith of the church. How can I doubt about tomorrow? It's the faith of the people that keeps me going. And I think that another thing is that we do look at our lifespan. When I look at what God is doing, I think even if after I die, things will be better. And I'm very hopeful about that.
What can we do? The needs must be enormous. How can we help?
Well, I think the first thing is I would like to invite young people, who are able to hear this message. As I said, come and see, but in the sense of to come and experience this faith of the people in our place, even if it's a week or two. I've seen young people who come to our part of the world. They may not know the language, but they just become infected with faith. And when they go back, they are not the same. I would like that to leave the door open. Please come. We have our hands open to receive you, offer you a place to experience our faith. Pray with us. The other thing is also we do need missionaries. Just as I encourage my priests to go out, we have a lot to share in common. So we are in first evangelization. We need priests who can go and be with the people and open parishes. Bring a faith that is solid. Our people are already religious, but I think they need a lot of missionaries to come. The other thing I wanted to add is that our church, we have seminaries. I just wanted to say this year, the bishops in Malawi had to turn away a lot of
potential vocations.
yes, about 80 had to be turned back. In my diocese, I had 20. I selected 3
Because of lack of
space in the seminary. We have another type of idea to increase in another seminary, another place. But what I'm saying is, if there are people who want to help in the formation, sustain, pay for the seminarians, it's much, much appreciated. It's never a loss. Some of those the things I can share with you.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thanks to you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the warm heart of Africa, the work of His Excellency Bishop George in Malawi, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.